The courtroom was frozen. Gasps echoed through the air as every pair of eyes widened, locked on the teenage girl standing in the center. The judge's gavel, gripped tightly in his trembling hand, remained suspended in midair, as if he had forgotten how to bring it down. The jury, once upright and focused, now leaned forward in their seats, their mouths slightly open in disbelief. Even the prosecutor, a seasoned man with decades of experience, stared at her with his lips parted, at a complete loss for words. The defense she had just presented, one that no one had seen coming, had changed everything. The case had seemed simple at first. Everyone thought they knew the truth. But in a few minutes, this teenage girl had shattered their certainty. What she had just revealed turned the entire trial upside down. The judge, an older man known for his stern and no-nonsense attitude, finally found his voice. His words came out in a low, hushed tone, as if he, too, couldn't believe what had just unfolded. "Are you telling me that this whole case is built on a lie?" Silence followed. A silence so deep that even the sound of breathing seemed loud. The jury exchanged uneasy glances. The audience members, who had packed the courtroom for the high-profile trial, clutched the edges of their seats. Then, bam, the judge finally brought down his gavel, his eyes still locked onto the teenage girl. "You had better explain yourself, young lady," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. The girl, standing tall in her oversized suit, one that clearly did not belong to her, took a deep breath. And then, she began her story. 2 months earlier, in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Chicago, 17-year-old Olivia Harper had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She was just an ordinary girl, the kind who spent her afternoons volunteering at the animal shelter, who made sure her little brother did his homework, and who never passed by someone in need without offering to help. She wasn't popular at school, but she wasn't invisible either. She existed somewhere in between, blending into the background with her brown hair always tied back in a ponytail and her secondhand jeans that were slightly too big. Olivia's dream had always been to become a lawyer. Ever since she was little, she had admired the power of justice, the way the truth could set people free, the way the right words could change lives. But it was just a dream. She didn't have money for law school, and the world didn't seem to notice girls like her. At least, not until that day. It all started with a simple act of kindness. She had been walking home from school, her backpack heavy with books, when she heard someone crying behind a gas station. Curiosity pulled her toward the sound, and when she turned the corner, she saw a little boy sitting on the ground, his face buried in his hands. His clothes were torn, and his shoes were too small, the soles peeling off at the edges. "Hey," Olivia said gently, kneeling down. "Are you okay?" The boy sniffled but didn't answer. He looked around, as if making sure no one else was listening. Finally, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, he said, "They took my mom." Olivia felt her stomach twist. "Who did?" "The police." His words sent a chill down her spine. She sat beside him, her heart pounding. "What happened?" she asked. The boy wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "They said she stole something. But she didn't. She told me to stay here and wait for her, but she hasn't come back." Olivia bit her lip. She had no reason to believe the boy's story, but something in his eyes, something raw and desperate, told her that he was telling the truth. "Where do you live?" she asked. The boy shook his head. "We don't have a house. We were staying at the shelter, but they kicked us out." Olivia's chest tightened. This wasn't just about a stolen item. Something was wrong. She didn't know it yet, but this moment, this choice to help a stranger, was the first step toward the trial that would leave a courtroom shocked. She just didn't know it yet. The next day, Olivia skipped school. She had never skipped school before, but this was important. She needed answers. She took the city bus downtown and made her way to the police station. She wasn't sure what she was expecting. Maybe an officer would pat her on the shoulder and say, "Don't worry, kid. It was all a big misunderstanding." But that wasn't what happened. Instead, when she asked about the boy's mother, the officer at the front desk barely looked up from his computer. "That case is closed," he said, tapping at his keyboard. She confessed. Olivia's stomach sank. "That doesn't make sense. Her son said she didn't do it." The officer sighed. "Kid, people lie all the time. She stole from a grocery store and got caught. That's all there is to it." Olivia wasn't convinced. "Can I see the evidence?" she asked. The officer gave her an annoyed look. "And you are?" "I'm her lawyer." The words were out before she could stop them. She expected him to laugh, but instead, he just smirked. Nice try, but only legal representatives can see case files. Olivia clenched her fists. She didn't have a law degree. She wasn't a lawyer, but she knew something was wrong, and she wasn't going to stop until she found out the truth. She left the police station with a plan forming in her mind. If no one else was going to fight for this woman, then she would. She had no idea how, but she was about to find out. Back in the courtroom, the tension was so thick it was almost suffocating. The judge rubbed his forehead, as if trying to process what he had just heard. "You mean to tell me," he said slowly, "that you, a 17-year-old girl, are standing in this courtroom as a legal defense attorney?" The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Olivia lifted her chin. "Yes, Your Honor," she said firmly. The prosecutor scoffed. "This is a joke." But Olivia didn't back down. "Then prove me wrong," she challenged. Another wave of murmurs swept through the room. The judge studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he said, "Very well. You want to defend this woman." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Then let's see what you've got." The judge's words settled over the courtroom like a thundercloud. "Then let's see what you've got." A ripple of shock passed through the room. The defense attorney, a well-known professional who had been handling the case, was still seated, his jaw slightly open. Even the prosecutor, a man who had seen nearly everything in his decades-long career, looked taken aback. Yet, Olivia Harper, a 17-year-old girl, stood her ground. She could feel the weight of every stare, the doubt, the disbelief, the silent laughter behind their expressions. But Olivia wasn't backing down. She cleared her throat and turned to the jury, her hands trembling slightly. She had never done anything like this before, standing in a courtroom, wearing a suit that wasn't hers, facing off against legal professionals who had years of experience. But she had something they didn't. The truth. She stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. "We were told this case was simple, that the accused, Maria Thompson, stole from a grocery store, confessed, and now she's going to prison." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But what if I told you that everything you've heard is a lie?" A murmur spread through the audience. The prosecutor scoffed. "Your Honor, this is absurd. This girl—" "Objection, Your Honor," Olivia said, surprising even herself. The judge raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" Olivia took a deep breath. "On the grounds that the prosecution isn't denying what I just said. If what I said was truly absurd, they'd refute it with facts. Instead, they're attacking me because I'm young." A few gasps echoed in the courtroom. The judge leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "Overruled," he said. "Let the girl speak." The prosecutor's face turned red, but he said nothing. Olivia turned back to the jury, gaining confidence. "I need you to ask yourselves one thing. What's easier, believing the case you were handed, or questioning it?" The jury members exchanged glances. "Let's go back to the evidence," she continued. "We were told there was surveillance footage of Maria stealing. But do you know what they didn't show you?" She turned toward the prosecutor's table and pointed. "The footage from before she allegedly stole something. The part where she walked into the store with money in her hand. Money that was never found." The courtroom fell silent. The judge frowned. "Are you saying there's missing evidence?" Olivia nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, and I intend to prove it." The judge let out a deep breath, then turned to the prosecutor. "Is this true?" The prosecutor hesitated for just a second, but it was enough. Olivia saw it. So did the jury. And suddenly, for the first time since this case had started, doubt had crept into their minds. 2 weeks earlier, Olivia sat in her bedroom, staring at the notes she had scribbled down in a frenzy. She had spent hours sneaking into the local library, researching case laws, watching old trial videos, and learning. She had no choice. If she wanted to help Maria Thompson, she needed to understand how the law worked. But there was one problem. No matter how much she studied, she still had no legal standing. No judge was going to let a high schooler defend someone in court. She groaned, rubbing her temples. "This is impossible," she muttered. Just then, a knock on the door startled her. Her little brother, Daniel, peeked in. "Hey, Liv." She turned, sighing. "Yeah." Daniel hesitated, then walked in, holding something behind his back. He was only 10, with big brown eyes that made him look younger. I made you something." He pulled out a tiny business card, handwritten in marker. "Olivia Harper, lawyer extraordinaire." She stared at it. You said you wanted to be a lawyer, so? He shifted awkwardly. Now you are one. Olivia swallowed the lump in her throat. Daniel didn't understand the law. He didn't understand how hard this was. But his little gesture, a child's belief that his sister could do anything, made something inside her snap into place. She was going to do this, no matter what. Back in the courtroom, Olivia stood firm as the judge eyed her carefully. You're telling me, he said, that the prosecution failed to show a complete version of the surveillance footage? Olivia nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And I have reason to believe that the missing footage would show Maria Thompson was innocent. The prosecutor jumped up. That's ridiculous. The footage that was provided is all that was relevant. But you decided that, Olivia countered. Not the jury. The judge's expression darkened. Does the prosecution have access to the full footage? The prosecutor hesitated. That was all the judge needed. His voice hardened. I want that footage brought into this courtroom. Immediately, the entire courtroom erupted into whispers. The case that had seemed open and shut was now falling apart. And a 17-year-old girl had done it. The courtroom was buzzing with whispers. A 17-year-old girl had just cornered a seasoned prosecutor. The judge's demand for the missing footage had sent shockwaves through the room. People in the audience murmured, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others leaning forward, eager to see what would happen next. The prosecutor, his face pale, adjusted his tie and tried to regain control. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, he said, clearing his throat. The footage we presented was the relevant part. The full tape was deemed unnecessary. Unnecessary, Olivia echoed, stepping forward. Then why hide it? The prosecutor's jaw clenched. The judge exhaled sharply and turned toward him. Is there, or is there not, additional footage of the incident? A tense pause. Then, finally, the prosecutor gave a stiff nod. Yes, Your Honor. But I maintain that it does not change the case. We'll be the judge of that, the judge snapped. I want that footage presented now. The bailiff moved quickly, calling for the evidence team to retrieve the full surveillance video. As the minutes dragged on, the tension in the room thickened. Olivia stood tall, but inside, her heart was pounding. This was it, the moment that could change everything. But she also knew something terrifying. If she was wrong, Maria Thompson would go to prison, and it would be her fault. A flicker of doubt crept into Olivia's mind, but she shoved it away. Trust yourself, Liv. Finally, a technician wheeled in a monitor. A USB was inserted, and the screen flickered to life. This, the technician said, is the complete, unedited surveillance footage from the grocery store. The prosecutor straightened his tie. As I've already stated, this will only reaffirm what we already know. The accused stole the items. Olivia clenched her fists. Let's see for ourselves. The courtroom fell dead silent as the video played. 2 weeks earlier, Olivia had never been inside a police evidence room before. It was dark, cold, and filled with filing cabinets that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. She had convinced a junior officer, who hadn't asked many questions, to let her take a look at the case files. She wasn't supposed to be here, but she didn't care. She flipped through pages of reports, photos, and legal documents. Something felt off, and then she saw it. A chain of custody report for the surveillance footage. It listed the original timestamp, 56 minutes of video, but the version presented in court? Only 9 minutes. Her hands trembled as she stared at the paper. They cut nearly an hour out. That meant one thing. Someone had something to hide. Back in the courtroom, the video rolled. At first, everything seemed normal. The screen showed Maria Thompson walking into the grocery store, just as the prosecution had claimed. The footage from before had never been shown in court, until now. The courtroom watched as Maria pulled a $20 bill from her pocket and headed toward the checkout counter. Then, something shocking happened. A store employee, a tall man in a dark vest, walked past her, and in the blink of an eye, he snatched the bill right out of her hand. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Maria turned toward him, confused, clearly asking for her money back. The man just shook his head and walked away. Seconds later, Maria glanced around, panic setting in. She grabbed the items she had planned to buy and rushed toward the exit, right as the security alarm blared. The camera footage paused. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Then, the judge spoke, his voice dangerously low. Mr. Vaughn, he said, turning to the prosecutor, would you care to explain why this was omitted from the evidence? The prosecutor opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at his assistant, but she stared down at the table, refusing to meet his gaze. The jury members looked at each other, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to anger. Olivia let out a slow breath. She had done it. She turned to Maria Thompson, whose eyes brimmed with tears. "You never stole anything," Olivia whispered. Maria covered her mouth, her whole body shaking. But the moment wasn't over. The judge straightened in his chair. "Bailiff," he said sternly, "bring that store employee in for questioning, immediately." Another ripple of gasps. The courtroom was no longer just about proving Maria's innocence. Now, they were about to uncover something much bigger. And Olivia wasn't ready for what would happen next. Because the man in the footage? He had a secret of his own. The courtroom was in chaos. Whispers surged like a tidal wave. The missing footage had turned the entire case on its head. Maria Thompson wasn't a thief. She had been set up. And now, the judge had just ordered the store employee, the man who had stolen her money, to be brought in for questioning. The prosecutor's face was pale. His confidence had crumbled. He had spent weeks painting Maria as a criminal, but now, in a matter of minutes, a 17-year-old girl had exposed the truth. But Olivia knew this wasn't over. She wasn't just up against the prosecutor anymore. Whoever had tampered with the footage had done so for a reason, and she had a bad feeling they weren't going to let the truth come out so easily. A sudden, sharp voice interrupted the commotion. "Your Honor." The prosecutor stood, his voice firm but desperate. "This evidence, while unexpected, does not prove that Maria Thompson is innocent. The fact remains that she left the store with unpaid goods. That, by definition, is theft." Olivia felt anger flare inside her. He's still trying to twist the truth. She turned to face him. "Are you seriously going to stand there and pretend that context doesn't matter?" she shot back. Maria walked in with money. She was robbed in plain sight by an employee. She grabbed the items she needed and ran because she had been forced into a situation where she had no other choice. She turned to the jury, her voice steady. "Would any of you do anything differently if you were in her position? If you had a hungry child waiting for you and your last bit of money was stolen right in front of you?" The jury members shifted uncomfortably. One woman in the front row looked down, deep in thought. The judge rubbed his chin. "The young lady makes a strong point," he said, his tone unreadable. "However, I want to hear from the employee in question before we continue deliberating." The bailiff returned at that moment. He leaned in and whispered something to the judge. And that's when things took a terrifying turn. The judge's expression darkened. His fingers drummed against the bench. "Is this confirmed?" he asked quietly. The bailiff nodded grimly. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. Something is wrong. Finally, the judge exhaled and looked toward the courtroom. His voice was steady, but Olivia could hear the underlying tension. "The store employee in question," he said slowly, "has just been reported missing." A collective gasp echoed through the room. "Missing?" Olivia's blood ran cold. No, this wasn't a coincidence. Whoever had cut the footage had done it for a reason. And now, the one person who could expose the truth had vanished. She wasn't just dealing with a simple case anymore. She was up against something much bigger. 3 days earlier, Olivia had spent all night digging through court records. The library's old computers were slow, the screens flickering every few minutes. But she didn't care. She was searching for anything that could explain why Maria had been targeted. She typed in keywords. Maria Thompson, theft case, store employee records. Nothing. She groaned and leaned back, rubbing her temples. "Think, Liv. Think." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, she tried something new. Grocery store ownership records. A long list of businesses appeared. She scrolled past them, scanning for the store where Maria had been accused of stealing. And then, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The store wasn't just owned by a corporation. It was owned by a private investor. And that private investor was the prosecutor. Olivia's heart stopped. The same man trying to send Maria to prison was financially tied to the store. That's when she realized something huge. Maria's arrest wasn't about theft. It was a setup. Back in the courtroom, Olivia's mind raced. The store employee was missing. That wasn't an accident. Someone didn't want him to talk. The judge turned to the prosecutor. "Mr. Vaughn, do you have an explanation for this sudden disappearance?" The prosecutor's face remained neutral, but his grip on the table was too tight. "I have no connection to this man's whereabouts, Your Honor." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Liar. She took a deep breath. Your Honor, she said carefully, I'd like permission to present new findings that may explain why Maria Thompson was arrested in the first place. The prosecutor snapped his head toward her. Objection, he barked. On what grounds? The judge asked. The prosecutor hesitated. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Overruled, the judge said. Proceed. Olivia turned to the jury, her heart pounding. I believe Maria Thompson's arrest wasn't an accident, she said. I believe it was deliberate. A murmur spread through the courtroom. The store where she was arrested is privately owned, Olivia continued. And do you know who has financial ties to it? She turned and pointed straight at the prosecutor. Him. The room exploded. Gasps. Shouting. Shocked expressions everywhere. The prosecutor slammed his hand against the table. This is outrageous. Is it? Olivia shot back. Because I found legal documents linking you to that store. Maria Thompson's case wasn't just another theft charge. It was a trap. The judge banged his gavel. Order in the court. But Olivia wasn't done. Maria was struggling. She had been evicted, she had no job, and she was desperate. And someone saw that as an opportunity. She stepped forward, locking eyes with the jury. Doesn't it seem a little strange that a woman with no criminal record suddenly decided to steal? Right in front of security cameras? That the footage was conveniently edited? And now, that the one person who could clear her name is missing. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge turned toward the prosecutor. His expression was unreadable. Mr. Vaughn, he said quietly, I expect you to provide a very good explanation. The prosecutor opened his mouth. But then, bam, the doors of the courtroom burst open. A uniformed officer rushed in, his face pale. Your Honor, he called out. We have a situation. The entire courtroom turned toward him. The officer swallowed hard. We just found the missing store employee. A tense pause. And he has something to say. The courtroom froze. A police officer had just burst through the doors, his face pale, his voice shaking. We just found the missing store employee, he announced, his words echoing through the courtroom. Olivia felt her heart slam against her ribs. This was it. The missing man, the only person who could confirm that Maria Thompson had been framed, had been found. And now, he was about to speak. The judge straightened in his chair. Bring him in, he ordered, his voice sharp. The officer turned and gestured toward the hallway. A moment later, 2 more officers escorted a man into the courtroom. He looked disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his face covered in sweat. He had the same dark vest he had worn in the surveillance footage, the same one he had been wearing when he had stolen Maria's money. Whispers rippled through the audience. That's him, someone murmured. Where has he been? The judge raised a hand for silence. He turned his piercing gaze toward the man. State your name for the record. The man swallowed hard. Richard Dawson, Your Honor. Olivia watched him carefully. He looked terrified. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Dawson, you have been missing for over 24 hours. The court would like to know why. Dawson hesitated. Olivia felt the tension in the air like a rubber band stretched too tight. If he told the truth, everything would unravel. The prosecutor sat stiffly, his hands curled into fists. Something wasn't right. And then, Dawson exhaled sharply and looked up. His eyes darted toward Olivia for a second before he turned to the judge. I was threatened, he blurted out. The courtroom exploded. Gasps. Shouting. Shocked murmurs. The judge slammed his gavel down. Order. The noise died down, but the air was thick with tension. The judge's gaze hardened. Threatened by whom? Dawson's hands trembled as he wiped his forehead. I don't know exactly who, he said, his voice unsteady. I just know that after the trial started getting attention, someone grabbed me outside my apartment. They told me to keep my mouth shut. A few people in the jury exchanged nervous glances. Olivia's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about a stolen $20 bill anymore. This was bigger. Someone powerful didn't want the truth to come out. The judge's expression was unreadable. Let me be clear, Mr. Dawson. Are you saying that your disappearance was not voluntary? Dawson shook his head frantically. No, I was locked in a basement overnight. They let me go this morning, told me to disappear. The judge let out a slow breath. And yet, you're here. Dawson hesitated. Then, his eyes flickered to Olivia again. Her pulse quickened. He recognizes me. Why? Dawson looked down at his hands. Because I was wrong, he admitted. Maria Thompson didn't steal anything. I stole from her, and I lied about it. The courtroom erupted again. A woman in the back gasped. The prosecutor stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "Your Honor," he shouted. "This man is obviously unreliable. He's been missing for a full day, and now he suddenly remembers that he lied." He let out a short laugh. "This is a complete mockery of our legal system." The judge's eyes snapped toward him. "Sit down." The prosecutor froze. Then, slowly, he sank back into his chair, his face red with frustration. The judge turned back to Dawson. "Continue." Dawson swallowed hard. "It was all set up. Someone told me to do it. They said if I made it look like Maria was stealing, I'd get a bonus." He let out a shaky breath. "I didn't think much of it. I was desperate for money. But when I saw the trial, I realized." He paused, eyes flicking toward Maria, who sat frozen in shock. "I realized I ruined a woman's life." A heavy silence fell over the room. Olivia's heart was racing. Maria had been set up. And now, they had a confession. The judge exhaled sharply and turned to the prosecutor. "Mr. Vaughn, is there anything you'd like to say?" The prosecutor straightened his tie. His face was stone cold. "I maintain that this is nothing more than a desperate attempt to manipulate the court," he said smoothly. "There is still no physical evidence tying me, or anyone else, to this alleged setup." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. He wasn't even denying it anymore. He was deflecting. The judge sighed. "Regardless, this changes everything." He turned toward Olivia. "Miss Harper, would you like to say anything before I make my ruling?" This was it. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Your Honor," she said firmly, "Maria Thompson was framed. This confession proves it." She turned toward the jury. "The law is supposed to be about justice. And justice means acknowledging when we've made a mistake." She turned back to the judge. "I ask that all charges against Maria Thompson be dropped immediately." A tense pause. The judge folded his hands in front of him. Then he nodded. "Charges against Maria Thompson are hereby dropped." The courtroom erupted into cheers. Maria let out a choked sob, collapsing into Olivia's arms. "Thank you," she whispered, her body shaking. "Thank you so much." But Olivia wasn't celebrating yet. Because even though Maria was free, something still wasn't right. She turned her gaze toward the prosecutor. And for the first time, she noticed something strange. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicked. He was smirking. Chills crawled up her spine. And that's when she realized. This wasn't over. Not even close. The courtroom exploded with cheers. Maria Thompson was free. The judge had just dropped all charges against her. She sobbed into Olivia's shoulder, her relief pouring out in uncontrollable waves. Jury members looked stunned. Spectators whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief. But Olivia didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because as she turned toward the prosecutor, she saw something chilling. He was smiling. Not a smile of defeat. Not a smile of frustration. But a smirk. Like he had won. A chill crept up Olivia's spine. Why is he smiling? And then, as if reading her thoughts, the prosecutor, Mr. Vaughn, slowly leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and mouthed two words. "Your turn." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Something was wrong. And before she could even process what it was, bam! The doors slammed open. Two uniformed officers stormed into the courtroom. The noise died down instantly. The judge frowned. What is the meaning of this? One officer stepped forward, looking grim. "Olivia Harper?" he said. Olivia stiffened. "Yes." The officer pulled out a warrant. "You're under arrest." The entire courtroom gasped. Maria clutched Olivia's arm. "What? No. That's impossible." The judge's eyes widened. "On what grounds?" The officer's voice was calm but firm. "Miss Harper has been charged with illegally practicing law without a license." Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. And then, laughter. Low, controlled, mocking. Olivia's head snapped toward the prosecutor. He was sitting back in his chair, watching her with a look of pure amusement. "Nice work, kid," he said smoothly. "But you didn't think I'd let you walk away, did you?" Olivia's stomach twisted. This was a trap. All along, this had been a trap. She had exposed his corruption, but he had planned for this. And now, she was the one in handcuffs. The judge slammed his gavel down. "Wait just a moment. This young woman uncovered an illegal scheme. She saved an innocent woman from going to prison." The officer shook his head. "Doesn't change the fact that she broke the law. She acted as an attorney when she isn't one." He turned back to Olivia. "Miss Harper, You have the right to remain silent. Wait. Maria stood up suddenly. This isn't fair. She was trying to help me. But Olivia knew. This wasn't about fairness. It was about power. And right now, she didn't have any. She took a deep breath and turned to Maria. It's okay, she whispered. But you're free. That's what matters. Maria's eyes filled with tears. The bailiff stepped forward and took Olivia's arm. Come with us. The weight of the cuffs around her wrists felt heavy. She lifted her head. She wasn't going to let Vaughn see her afraid. As she walked past him, he leaned in slightly. Welcome to the real world, kid, he murmured. This is how the game is played. Olivia didn't blink. She didn't respond. Because deep down, she knew something Vaughn didn't. This game wasn't over. Not even close. As the officers led her away, her mind was already racing. She had one shot to fix this. And she was going to take it. No matter what. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Olivia's wrists. She kept her head high, even as the officers led her through the courtroom doors. Whispers followed her. Shocked murmurs. The sounds of disbelief. She didn't care. Her heart was hammering, but not out of fear. Out of determination. This wasn't the end. She knew Vaughn thought he had won. He thought he had played the game better. But Olivia wasn't done playing. Not yet. She just needed to figure out her next move. The officers walked her down a long hallway, their boots clicking against the tile floor. Then, they pushed open a door and led her into a dimly lit interrogation room. A simple metal table sat in the middle of the room, 2 chairs facing each other. A camera blinked red in the corner. One of the officers, an older man with a sharp gaze, gestured for her to sit. She did. He pulled out a file, flipping through the papers. Olivia Harper, he read. 17 years old. No criminal record. Straight A student. He raised an eyebrow. And yet, here you are, under arrest for practicing law without a license. Olivia stayed silent. He studied her for a moment, then sighed. Listen, kid. You did a good thing in that courtroom. But the law is the law. Olivia finally spoke. And what happens when the law is being used to silence the truth? The officer's jaw tightened. She leaned forward. Do you think I don't know what's happening here? Vaughn set me up. He knew if I exposed him, he'd need a way to shut me down. That's why I'm here. Not because I broke the law. She shook her head. But because I exposed the wrong person. The officer didn't say anything. But his silence said enough. She took a deep breath. I want to make my phone call. He hesitated, then finally nodded. One call. He uncuffed one of her hands and slid the phone toward her. Olivia didn't hesitate. She dialed the number she knew by heart. It rang twice before a familiar voice picked up. Olivia. Uncle James, she whispered. A pause. Then his voice turned sharp. What's wrong? Olivia closed her eyes. She hated asking for help. But right now, she needed it. I need a lawyer, she said. Another pause. Then, hang tight, kid. I'm on my way. She exhaled. Game on. 6 hours later. The police station buzzed with tension. Olivia sat in a holding cell, arms crossed, waiting. She had refused to say another word. The officers tried asking her questions, but she just kept repeating the same thing. My lawyer is on the way. And now he was here. The station doors burst open. Uncle James strode in, dressed in a crisp black suit, his expression dark. James Harper was no ordinary lawyer. He was one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the state. And he was furious. Where is she? He demanded. The officer behind the desk swallowed hard. Mr. Harper, you arrested my niece on a technicality. James cut him off. Let's not pretend this is about the law. This is about politics. The officer shifted uncomfortably. She did act as a lawyer without a license. And yet, James snapped. The State Bar Association hasn't filed any charges against her. You don't have a case, and you know it. The officer hesitated. James stepped closer, lowering his voice. Tell me something. Who gave the order to arrest her? The officer opened his mouth, and then closed it. James nodded slowly. I thought so. He turned toward Olivia's holding cell. Get her out. Now. The officer hesitated for a second too long. James pulled out his phone. If she isn't released in the next 5 minutes, I'll be filing an unlawful detention lawsuit against this entire department. And I promise you, it will get ugly. Silence. Then, the officer sighed and pulled out his keys. A few moments later, the cell door swung open. Let's go, kid, James said. Olivia stood up, unshaken. She walked out, feeling Vaughn's plan falling apart. But she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. As they stepped outside into the crisp night air, James turned to her. All right, he said, his voice softer now. Tell me everything. Olivia took a deep breath. Then, she told him everything. The missing footage. The setup. Vaughn's smirk. The way he had planned this. James listened carefully. When she was done, he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Then we're going to destroy him. Olivia's heart raced. How, she asked. James's expression turned deadly serious. We don't just fight back, he said. We take the whole system down with him. And that's when Olivia realized. This wasn't just about Vaughn anymore. This was bigger. And she was about to change everything. The cold night air wrapped around Olivia as she and Uncle James strode away from the police station. She was free, but she wasn't relieved. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. Vaughn had played his move, setting her up for practicing law without a license. But now, it was her turn. James led her to his sleek black car, the engine already purring softly. He pulled open the passenger door, gesturing for her to get in. We don't have much time, he said. Olivia slid inside. Where are we going? James shut the door, walked around, and climbed into the driver's seat. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled onto the road, gripping the wheel tight. His jaw was clenched, his eyes focused straight ahead. Finally, he spoke. We're going to burn Vaughn's entire house of cards to the ground. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. James had always been the cool-headed one in the family, the logical one. But tonight, there was something different in his voice. Something Olivia had never heard before. Rage. She sat up straighter. You believe me? James let out a low chuckle. Kid, you just tore apart a prosecutor's case in open court, exposed a rigged system, and got a confession on record. He glanced at her. Of course, I believe you. Olivia exhaled. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. But Vaughn won't stop, she said. Not after this. He played this whole thing like a game of chess. I made my move, and now, we checkmate him. James interrupted. Olivia frowned. How? James's expression darkened. By finding out who he's working for. Olivia blinked. What do you mean? James tightened his grip on the wheel. Vaughn is powerful, but he's not that powerful. He doesn't control the police. He doesn't control who gets arrested. He had help. Olivia's stomach twisted. He was right. Vaughn was just the front man. Someone bigger was pulling the strings. And if they didn't figure out who, this wasn't going to stop. Olivia refused to let that happen. She straightened. Where do we start? James smirked. We start by digging up every dirty secret Vaughn has ever tried to bury. And just like that, the real battle had begun. 3 hours later, the safe house. James's safe house was really just a tiny office tucked away in a rundown part of the city. The moment they stepped inside, he locked the door and pulled the blinds shut. Then, he flipped on a desk lamp and cracked his knuckles. All right, he said, pulling out his laptop. Time to see what Vaughn has been hiding. Olivia slid into the chair next to him, her mind racing. What are we looking for? She asked. James began typing furiously. Anything that connects Vaughn to bigger players. If he set up Maria's arrest, chances are he's done it before. We just need proof. Olivia's eyes widened. He was right. Vaughn's plan against Maria had been too smooth, too well rehearsed. This wasn't the first time he'd done this. She leaned forward, her pulse quickening. So we find the pattern. James grinned. Now you're thinking like a lawyer. Click, click, click. The room was silent except for the sound of James's fingers flying across the keyboard. Then, he froze. Olivia's heart jumped. What? What did you find? James didn't answer right away. He just turned the laptop toward her. She leaned in, and her blood ran cold. It was a list of names. Dozens of them. Each name had a case file attached. And all of them had one thing in common. They had all been arrested under Vaughn's jurisdiction. And they had all been innocent. Olivia felt her stomach twist. He's been doing this for years. James nodded grimly. And look at this. He scrolled down. Olivia's heart slammed against her ribs. A payment log. Every single case Vaughn had prosecuted had been paid off. By the same company. A private corporation. One that owned dozens of businesses across the city. James's voice was deadly quiet. He's not just framing people. He tapped the screen. He's selling convictions. Olivia's breath caught. The setup. The missing footage. The bribery. It wasn't about Maria. It was about profit. And Vaughn had been running a criminal conviction racket for years. Her hands curled into fists. We have to take this public, she said. James exhaled. We will. But we need more. He looked at her. If we go public now, Vaughn will call it a misinterpretation of evidence. We need something unshakable. Olivia's mind raced. Then, an idea hit her. What about Richard Dawson? She said suddenly. James frowned. The store employee? Olivia nodded quickly. He admitted in court that someone paid him to frame Maria. That means he was given money directly. If we can trace where that money came from. James's eyes lit up. We can follow it straight to Vaughn's boss. A direct money trail. The one thing Vaughn wouldn't be able to deny. James grinned. You're a genius, kid. Olivia grinned back. I know. Then, her smile faded. We need to find Dawson, she said. Before Vaughn does. James nodded. Let's move. As they grabbed their things and rushed toward the door, Olivia's heart pounded. Vaughn thought he had won, but he had no idea what was coming. Because now, Olivia wasn't just playing defense. She was going for the kill. The city lights flickered against the rain-slicked streets as Olivia and James moved fast. They had one shot at this. Richard Dawson, the key witness, the man who had admitted to framing Maria Thompson, was now the most important person in this entire case. And if they didn't get to him before Vaughn did, they would lose everything. James's car sped through the darkened roads, the windshield wipers working furiously against the rain. Olivia sat in the passenger seat, her hands gripping her phone, her mind racing. She had never been more determined in her life. Where do we even start? She asked. Dawson could be anywhere. James didn't take his eyes off the road. We start with his apartment. Olivia's stomach twisted. What if Vaughn already got to him? James's jaw tightened. Then we find a new plan. Olivia exhaled sharply. No, that couldn't happen. They had to get to Dawson first. Because if they didn't, then Vaughn would silence him. For good. 30 minutes later, Dawson's apartment. James parked the car a block away from Dawson's apartment complex. The building was run down, its brick exterior cracked and stained from years of neglect. A flickering street lamp buzzed overhead. Olivia's heart pounded as she stepped out of the car. She felt it. The tension. The danger. Something wasn't right. James looked around, scanning the street. Stay close, he murmured. They hurried toward the entrance, the cold night air biting at Olivia's skin. James reached the door first and knocked firmly. No answer. Olivia swallowed hard. Maybe he's not here. James knocked again, louder this time. Richard Dawson. It's James Harper. We need to talk. Silence. Then, a rustling noise from inside. Olivia's heart jumped. Someone was in there. James exchanged a glance with her, then tried the doorknob. Unlocked. He pushed it open slowly, revealing the dark apartment inside. Olivia's pulse quickened. Dawson, she called out. No response. James flipped on the light. And that's when they saw it. The apartment was a mess. Drawers ripped open, papers scattered everywhere. A chair was knocked over. The couch cushions had been torn apart, as if someone had been searching for something. Olivia's breath caught. Someone got here first. James moved quickly, scanning the room. This wasn't a robbery, he muttered. They were looking for something specific. Olivia's chest tightened. They were too late. And then, a low groan echoed from the other room. Olivia's head snapped toward the noise. Did you hear that? James was already moving. He pushed open the bedroom door. And there, lying on the floor, was Richard Dawson. Barely conscious, bruised, and bleeding. Olivia's breath hitched. Oh my God. James dropped to his knees beside him. Dawson, can you hear me? Dawson coughed, his lips trembling. His left eye was swollen shut, his shirt stained with blood. He looked terrified. He gasped for air. They came for me. James's voice was sharp. Who? Dawson let out a weak laugh. You already know. Vaughn. Olivia clenched her fists. That monster got to him first. Dawson groaned in pain, his head rolling to the side. Olivia's stomach twisted. They needed to get him out of here before Vaughn finished what he started. James reached for his phone. I'm calling an ambulance. Dawson's eyes snapped open. No, he choked out, gripping James's arm. James hesitated. Dawson, you need a hospital. You don't get it. Dawson rasped. His breathing was ragged, every word an effort. They're still watching me. His eyes darted toward the window. Olivia followed his gaze, and her blood turned to ice. A black SUV was parked across the street. Engine running. Headlights off. Someone was watching them. Her heart slammed against her ribs. James, she whispered. James turned, saw the SUV, and cursed under his breath. They found us, Olivia breathed. James moved fast. We need to go? Now. Dawson groaned as James hoisted him up. Can you walk? Not well, Dawson muttered. But I can try. Olivia grabbed his arm, steadying him. We'll get you out of here. She turned back, toward the window. The SUV's headlights suddenly flicked on. The engine roared to life. And then it started moving. Straight toward them. Olivia's stomach dropped. They're coming, she choked out. James didn't hesitate. Run. The escape. James, Olivia, and Dawson rushed out the back of the apartment complex, slipping into the alley just as the SUV screeched to a stop in front of the building. Olivia could hear car doors slamming. Footsteps. They were coming. James led the way, moving fast. Olivia kept a tight grip on Dawson, who was struggling to keep up. They reached the end of the alley and stopped cold. Another black SUV was waiting, trapping them. Olivia's mind raced. They were boxed in. Dawson coughed violently, his body shaking. James's jaw tightened. We fight, he muttered. Olivia's pulse pounded. There's 3 of us, James. Against what? 5. 6. James cracked his knuckles. I like those odds. Olivia rolled her eyes. Unbelievable. And then, another sound. From behind them. A voice. Get in. A black sedan pulled up, its passenger door flying open. Olivia spun around and froze. Behind the wheel was a woman. Mid-30s. Fierce blue eyes. A sharp suit. She looked like she meant business. James narrowed his eyes. Who the hell? No time for questions. The woman cut him off. Get in if you want to live. James hesitated. Olivia didn't. She dragged Dawson into the car. James jumped in after them. The moment the doors slammed shut, the woman hit the gas. The tires screeched as they tore out of the alley, just as the SUVs behind them lunged forward. Bullets ripped through the night. Olivia ducked, heart hammering. James cursed. But the woman behind the wheel? She didn't even flinch. She just kept driving. Fast. Olivia turned to her, breathing hard. Who are you? The woman kept her eyes on the road. Someone who doesn't like Vaughn, she said. Then, she glanced at Olivia through the rearview mirror. And someone who's about to help you take him down. The black sedan sped through the city streets, weaving between cars like a phantom in the night. Behind them, the 2 black SUVs were still following. Olivia gripped the seat, her heart pounding. Dawson was slumped beside her, his breathing shaky, his face still pale from blood loss. James sat in the front seat, his jaw clenched. And the woman, the complete stranger who had just saved them, drove like she was born to escape. Who are you? Olivia demanded again, louder this time. The woman's icy blue eyes flicked toward her in the rearview mirror. Someone who wants Vaughn to burn, she said. The tires squealed as she took a sharp turn, nearly clipping the side of a parked truck. One of the SUVs tried to follow, but didn't make the turn in time. It slammed into a streetlight. Olivia flinched. One down, but the other was still chasing them. James exhaled sharply. Okay, let's try this again. Who the hell are you? The woman smirked. The name's Vanessa Holt. Former FBI. Olivia's stomach dropped. FBI. James's eyes narrowed. Former. Vanessa's smirk faded. I was investigating Vaughn and his dirty cases 5 years ago, she said. Got too close. He had me discredited, made sure I was kicked off the case, blacklisted, and erased from the system. Olivia felt her hands curl into fists. Vaughn wasn't just a corrupt prosecutor. He was dangerous. Now, Vanessa continued, I've been waiting for someone to expose him. She shot Olivia a look. Imagine my surprise when a teenager started tearing his whole empire down. Olivia swallowed. So you're here to help? Vanessa grinned. Kid, I've been waiting for this moment for years. Suddenly, gunfire. The remaining SUV was closing in. Bullets ripped through the back window. Olivia ducked, covering her head as glass shattered everywhere. James cursed. They're trying to kill us. Vanessa didn't even flinch. She reached under her seat, pulled out a handgun, and rolled down the window. You might want to hold on, she warned. Then, she leaned out and fired. The shots hit the SUV's front tires. Bang, bang. The tires exploded, and the SUV swerved out of control. It spun, crashed into a parked car, and flipped. The sound of twisting metal and breaking glass filled the night. Then, silence. Vanessa rolled the window back up and sighed. Well, that was fun. Olivia and James just stared at her. You're insane, Olivia muttered. Vanessa grinned. Yeah, but I'm on your side. She took another turn, speeding toward an abandoned warehouse district. Where are we going? James asked. Somewhere Vaughn won't find us, Vanessa said. Olivia exhaled slowly. They had escaped, for now. But Vaughn wasn't going to stop. And if Vanessa was right, they were running out of time. The hideout. The warehouse was cold, dark, and smelled like rust. Vanessa led them inside, locking the heavy steel door behind them. Dawson groaned, sinking onto an old couch. Olivia grabbed a first aid kit from Vanessa's supplies and began cleaning his wounds. James paced. We need a new plan. Vanessa sat on a crate, arms crossed. You already have one. James raised an eyebrow. Enlighten us. Vanessa smirked. Follow the money. Olivia's eyes widened. That's what we were trying to do before Vaughn's goons showed up. Exactly, Vanessa said. Dawson was paid to frame Maria. That means there's a paper trail. We just have to find it. Olivia turned to Dawson. Do you remember how you got paid? Dawson winced. It wasn't cash. It was wired to a prepaid account. James leaned forward. Can you access it? Dawson hesitated. Maybe, but I don't have my laptop anymore. Vanessa tossed him a burner laptop. Work your magic. Dawson sighed and started typing. Olivia and James leaned over, watching closely. Then, Dawson froze. His eyes widened. Oh my God, he whispered. Olivia's heart pounded. What? Dawson turned the laptop around. On the screen was a list of transactions. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. All funneled into fake accounts. And every single transaction led back to one name. Olivia's stomach dropped. James's hands clenched. Vanessa let out a low whistle. Well. Because the name on the screen wasn't just Vaughn's. It was someone higher up. Someone far more powerful. A name Olivia never expected. Judge Lionel Carter. The very same judge who had been overseeing Maria's case. Olivia's breath caught. The entire justice system was rigged. Judge Carter. Vaughn. The police. They were all in on it. Her pulse pounded in her ears. They were never just after Maria, she whispered. James nodded grimly. No. They were after control. Vanessa leaned back. Congratulations, kid. You didn't just expose Vaughn. You just uncovered the biggest corruption scandal in the state. Olivia swallowed hard. They had proof. The question was, could they survive long enough to use it? The room was silent. The laptop's screen glowed in the darkness, revealing a truth that was more dangerous than anything Olivia had imagined. Judge Lionel Carter, the same judge who had dropped Maria's charges, was in on it. Her hands curled into fists. This wasn't just about Vaughn anymore. The entire justice system was rigged. And now, they had proof. James exhaled sharply. This just got a lot more dangerous. Vanessa nodded. Exposing a corrupt prosecutor is one thing. But a federal judge? She let out a low whistle. We're talking about taking down the entire system here. Dawson swallowed hard. If they find out I helped you guys, you're already a target, Olivia reminded him. Staying quiet won't keep you safe. Taking them down will. Dawson hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right, James said, standing. We need to move fast. If Carter finds out we have this. Boom. The warehouse shook violently as an explosion ripped through the air. The walls rattled. Smoke poured in from the outside. Olivia's blood turned to ice. Vanessa's eyes snapped toward the door. They found us. James grabbed Olivia's arm. We need to go now. Dawson slammed the laptop shut. I can't lose this data. Vanessa was already moving. She grabbed a duffel bag, pulling out 2 handguns and a knife. She tossed a gun to James. You know how to use this? She asked. James caught it without hesitation. I used to. Olivia's heart hammered. We don't have time for this, she snapped. We need an exit. Vanessa gritted her teeth. Back way. But if they planted explosives, they have us surrounded. Another explosion ripped through the night. Closer this time. Dawson flinched. They're gonna burn us alive. Vanessa grabbed a flashlight and flicked it on. Then we don't let them. She led them toward a hidden back door, kicking it open. Cold air rushed in. Outside, 2 black SUVs were waiting. Figures in dark suits stepped out, their faces shadowed. But Olivia recognized one of them immediately. Vaughn. Smirking. Well, he called out. This is a surprise. Olivia felt rage coil inside her. You're insane. Vaughn chuckled. And you're a smart girl. He tilted his head. But did you really think you'd win? James raised the gun. Back off. Vaughn didn't even flinch. Because someone else stepped forward. Judge Lionel Carter. Olivia's breath caught. The man who had sat in court, pretending to be a neutral judge, was the man running this entire operation. He adjusted his coat, his piercing gaze settling on her. You've caused quite the problem, young lady. Olivia's hands shook with fury. You ruined lives, she spat. For what? Money. Judge Carter smirked. For power. Vaughn took a step forward. Here's the thing, kid. You don't walk away from this. You have too much information now. Olivia's mind raced. They were trapped. Carter had brought backup. They weren't walking out of here alive. Unless. She made a move right now. Her eyes flicked to the laptop in Dawson's hands. She had one chance. Without thinking, she grabbed it and bolted. Run, she screamed. James fired the gun. Bang. Bang. Vanessa took off after Olivia, shoving Dawson forward. Go. Move. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets whizzed past Olivia's head as she sprinted through the dark alleyways. Her lungs burned. The laptop was her only chance. She wasn't letting it go. Keep running. James shouted. More gunfire. A car engine roared. Vanessa yanked Olivia toward a side street. This way. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She just ran. The safe house. They didn't stop running until they reached an abandoned motel on the outskirts of the city. James was bleeding from a graze on his arm. Vanessa's breathing was ragged. Dawson looked like he was about to pass out. But they had made it. And Olivia still had the laptop. James leaned against the table, groaning. That was too close. Vanessa locked the doors. They won't stop coming. Olivia placed the laptop on the table and flipped it open. We have everything we need, she panted. We take this to the media. Tonight. James rubbed his face. It's not that simple. Carter and Vaughn have control. The police are under their thumb. The media? Probably too scared to touch this. Olivia's hands curled into fists. Then we go bigger. James frowned. What do you mean? She turned the laptop toward them, her mind whirring. The internet, she said. We don't need the news. We make this public ourselves. Vanessa's eyes widened. You're talking about a full-scale exposure. Olivia nodded. We upload the files. The transaction records. Dawson's confession. The missing footage. Everything. James hesitated. They'll come after us harder. Olivia met his gaze. They're already trying to kill us. Silence. Then, James exhaled. All right, kid, he said. Let's blow this thing wide open. Dawson groaned. I hope you know what you're doing. Olivia's eyes burned with determination. So do I. She opened the laptop and began the upload. Across the city, Judge Carter's phone buzzed. He picked it up, his face calm. Vaughn's voice came through, cold and sharp. Sir, we have a problem. Carter sighed. What now? A pause. Then Vaughn's voice dropped lower. They're making the files public. Judge Carter's hand tightened around his phone. His jaw clenched. And for the first time in years, he felt fear. The laptop screen flickered, the progress bar crawling forward. Uploading files. 47% complete. Olivia's hands were steady. She didn't flinch. Because after everything, after Vaughn's traps, after the gunfire, after running for her life, this was it. She was about to expose them all. James sat beside her, his fingers drumming against the table. Vanessa kept her eyes on the door, her gun ready. Dawson, still weak from his injuries, sat in the corner, staring at the screen with pure terror. Once this goes live, James murmured, we can't take it back. Olivia didn't hesitate. We don't need to. She clicked publish. The truth was out. 1 hour later, the city burns. It happened fast. The files spread like wildfire. Within minutes, social media platforms were flooded with the evidence. The financial transactions, the bribery logs, the secret network of false convictions, and most damning of all, the surveillance footage Vaughn had buried. Maria Thompson's case had been the first domino. Now, the entire system was falling. News outlets couldn't ignore it. They scrambled to verify the documents. The headlines were brutal. Breaking, leaked files expose corrupt justice system. Top prosecutor and judge connected to massive scandal. Hundreds of cases under review. Innocent lives stolen for profit. The public erupted. People protested outside courthouses. Officials were forced to respond. Vaughn tried to deny it. Judge Carter tried to stay silent. But the evidence was everywhere. They couldn't hide. And then, the FBI got involved. The arrests. The news cameras rolled live as federal agents stormed the courthouse. Judge Carter, once the most feared man in the city, was dragged out in handcuffs. His face was pale. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Vaughn was next. Reporters shouted questions as he was shoved into the back of an unmarked car. Do you deny the allegations? Is it true you framed innocent people? Did you think you'd get away with it? Vaughn didn't answer. He didn't smirk this time, because now he had lost. Olivia Harper, the girl who changed everything. The moment Vaughn was arrested, Olivia felt the weight finally lift off her chest. It was over. They won. James grinned, shaking his head. Kid, you just did the impossible. Vanessa smirked. The whole country knows your name now. Olivia exhaled. She didn't care about the fame. She cared about justice. And for the first time, real justice had won. Maria Thompson was officially exonerated. Other wrongly convicted victims were freed as their cases were reopened. The city had been broken, but now, it had a chance to be rebuilt. And Olivia? She wasn't done yet. 1 year later, the courtroom was packed. But this time, Olivia wasn't in handcuffs. She wasn't fighting to prove herself. She stood confidently in a proper suit, looking across the courtroom with determination. A real lawyer. A real force for justice. The judge smiled down at her. Ms. Harper, as a first-year law student, I must say, your motion is impressive. Olivia grinned. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Let's proceed. And just like that, Olivia Harper, the girl who once fought the system as an outsider, was now standing inside it. But this time, she was the one calling the shots.